Welcome. This is State of the Arts panel discussion hosted by Art&Seek and the Kimbell Art Museum. We're talking about taking it to the streets, the mural movement in Fort Worth. I'm Jerome Weeks, arts reporter, producer for KERA, and welcome to the discussion this afternoon. We invite you to comment or ask questions in the chat box area. We'll try to get to them towards the end of this discussion. The reason we decided to have this panel is that murals have a long history in Fort Worth, like the ones in Sundance Square. But in the past 2-3 years, they've been taking over the town. There's now a curated bike trip that will take you past nearly 40 murals around Fort Worth. Art Space 111 recently sent out a call for muralists. The budget to paint one wall on the Southside Gallery will be $8,000. So murals have become a big deal in Fort Worth, not just in their physical presence in the cityscape, but in how they're being used to build community, to demand change, express public anger, grief, pride. And so to talk about these issues this afternoon, we have 3 panelists. I'd like to welcome them. Jan Ballard has taught graphic design at TCU since 1986. She was honored with Faculty Member of the Year by TCU's College of Fine Arts. But most importantly for us, her senior students are often tasked to come up with an urban design project involving community engagement. And that involves developing banners, logos, park benches, and of course, murals. Jan Ballard. Letitia Huckaby is an artist who concentrates on her family and the African-American experience. She works in photojournalism and fabric work. Her art has been seen not only in local galleries, but in New Orleans, Harlem, and Vienna, Austria. When community activist Deborah Peoples was starting a large-scale project to denounce racism, she turned to Letitia and her husband Cedric to design it. Letitia Huckaby. And then Juan Velazquez considers himself an oil painter, but he's also developed a line of clothing and he's painted graffiti art. But he's gotten most public attention for his murals. He's painted nearly 30 of them around the North Texas area, particularly ones addressing concerns and traditions of the Latino community. Juan Velazquez. So welcome, everyone. Welcome, panelists. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Just a quick round robin question I wanted to start off with. Because there's so many murals going up in Fort Worth, I wanted to hear from each of you if there's any particular one that's impressed you, anything that you think hasn't gotten the attention it deserves because it may be out of the way, or that has taken this kind of art form to a different level. So, Jan, I can start with you.
I'm going to have to call out Juan in terms of his influence in Fort Worth. His latest mural, Vanessa, really brought not only attention to an important topic, but brought the community out. So I kind of consider his work visionary in that way, that it really affected change in Fort Worth.
Thank you.
Letitia?
Yeah, a mural that really sticks out with me is one by an artist named Charles Gray that ended up on the Tarrant County Democratic Party building, but it was sort of an animated drawing of a young woman with earrings that said "Vote and Voice," and it was used to sort of turn out, to help with voter turnout before the election. And I thought it was so brilliant, simple, clean, and yet it really hit a certain target market. And the Fort Worth Community Arts Center actually projected that image onto the side of the building at night for a while leading up to the election. So it really got a lot of visibility, and I was really excited about that piece.
I wish I'd seen that. That sounds really good. Juan, do you have a favorite?
Well, I mean, I have one that is not done that I'm actually going to start working on that I'm kind of very excited about because I've never seen something like this. I'm not that it's not out there, but I've just never seen it, which is I'm doing a mural that it's going to be the same mural, but in 2 different cities. So I'm doing one where there's these butterflies that are leaving into the sky, and in the other mural they're arriving. So if
Oh.
you actually crop both photos together, they will look like one whole mural, but they're going to be in different cities, Grand Prairie and Fort Worth. So it's a way to kind of unify the cities. And each butterfly is going to be a different color that stands for disabilities that children in the Grand Prairie and Fort Worth Independent School District um, have. So it's to bring awareness to the disabilities and the issues that some of these parents go through. And I was going to put up a sign on each of the murals that has a barcode that you can put your phone over and scan, and it will take you to links to explain to you what each color means, what disability, the kind of what this disability information about it, and how you can donate to some of those organizations that are helping children get wheelchairs or equipment that the family needs at home.
So the mural will actually be interactive
Exactly.
online as well.
Yeah, and so I've never seen a mural where it's the same mural, but you're almost like cutting it in half, and also being able to put a barcode on it to be able to learn about it, like watch a video on different disabilities, even share stories from families around the area that go through difficulties when they have a child that has special needs.
That's a novel way of engaging the community with a piece of public art like that. Had you heard about someone else doing that, or is it something that?
No, I was eating at a restaurant and it just hit me when I was eating. I was like, it would be cool if I can put a barcode and make a website that people can learn more about the mural, even like photos of how it was made. Or even like anyone that takes a photo in that mural that tags it, I can upload that photo so people can see the history of how many people have gone through there. Because when you make things that bring people together, that's beautiful. We're living in a time of division, and we need more things that bring people together. If you notice, like, oh, look at all the type of different people that come from different backgrounds, that they're different color, they've been here and enjoy the same mural, then we're one team. We're not divided, and there's less divisions between us.
Well, Juan, I wanted to stick with you for my first question. It's kind of a technical and practical one, but it has to do with how this whole form of art works. Let's say we have a young painter who has a passion and an idea. It's a big statement that he knows will give voice to his community. So now what? I mean, other than getting volunteers to help put it up, perhaps, how do you find a wall? Because you have said that you want to keep your art in the community to help beautify it, elevate it. So how do you go about finding the requisite wall, your own canvas?
A lot of it is just reaching out to the right people. Realtors are actually good people to know because they know who owns all the properties and they know who they can get you walls. So, but I haven't really had issues finding a wall other than one mural. And right now I have about 7 to 8 of them that they're on the works. So I am I I have enough walls at the moment.
Well, that's lucky. With Letitia's mural, which we'll get around to talking to the end, racism now, the message is pretty clear. The statement. You've painted quite a few larger than life portraits. People like Selena, the boxer, Virgil Ortiz, of course, the murdered army specialist, Vanessa Guillen. That's an impressive, that's a wide range of people, although they're all young and Latino, that's still a pretty unusual range of people. What leads you to those kinds of people? Do you have other portraits that you have in mind for the future?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what kind of statement I want to make. But my very first huge portrait was of my friend Kirsty. who is African American, and the name of that mural is called Black is Beautiful, and this is that mural that I painted when I had COVID. I didn't know at that time, but
Right.
I painted it by myself, and this is before nobody kind of knew me. So nobody actually went to see me paint the mural. Now I have hundreds of people that go watch me, but now at that time nobody came out to watch me paint it. And I painted that mural because I have a daughter, and she's pretty close to my skin color, which is and I before COVID hit, I took her to the museum,
Mhm.
and then it hit me that nobody from the paintings looked like her. She couldn't identify as anybody in the artwork. So I started thinking like that sends a message to children that maybe they're not as important and they're not beautiful, because I grew up very self-conscious about how dark I was, especially for Hispanic. You know, there's a lot of people there that would make fun of you because you're darker Mexican. So I wanted to paint something that if I wanted a little girl to walk by that mural and see herself in that mural and think to herself, well, if she's beautiful enough to be in this mural, I'm beautiful too. And so that was actually my very first huge mural portrait, and that's in Dallas behind the For the Culture studio in Old East Dallas.
Jan, he was talking about the way a mural can actually sort of form a community of people coming to see it. Your students, before they do their projects or as part of the project, go into a community, into a neighborhood to interview residents, community leaders. What's the kind of things they learn? What are they looking for when they do that? So they're not simply helicoptering in and telling a neighborhood, this is what you need to do.
No, actually, the design process is different than an artist process in terms of that the discovery phase, the research phase is critical to a designer in how they approach a problem to solve. And it's not a self-expression piece for a designer. So they have to go in and do a lot of research. There are a lot of data that the city collects on the demographics and the community that they read, but I require them pre-COVID to go into the community and take pictures and meet with the community center, the libraries, to find out what the community actually thinks of themselves. It's a representation of the community itself, not a description from the outsider looking in. It's really important for the TCU students, who many are visitors to Fort Worth for 4 years, to look outside their own community. TCU's mission is to educate students to be global communicators. And so I think that being part of the community and really taking from the community and giving them back some kind of proposal of branding, of imagery that they can use to reach out to developers and business people to invest in their community is important.
Letitia, is it safe to say that your project, The End Racism Now, was the first mural that you were involved with in designing?
Yes, that is very safe to say, because I really consider myself a muralist.
So briefly, how did you and Cedric get involved with that, painting that street?
It was Deborah Peoples, who was working with the city to get permissions to do this street mural. At the time, there were street murals going up all over the country, and they wanted to sort of capitalize on that energy. And she just sent out a blast to all the artists that she knew, asking if they would help, because she didn't have the skill set for that part of it. And so I responded and said that we'd be interested in helping, and sort of volunteered my husband along with me, since he's a painter. But so we met with the city downtown. They showed us the location where it could go, And she had already decided what it should say, but they left it to us to sort of design it. We came up with this design of a combination of black and white, with the idea that the community could sign onto it as well, but only sign on to the end and now part of it, not sign on to the racism. And we were very pleasantly surprised at the turnout that came. So it was great. It was a great experience, but yeah, I'd never considered myself a muralist before then.
One of the things that most impressed me, that I found most moving about that, is if someone approached me about a large scale project, painting on the street, I think I would go with big, bold, simple, to really make a mark on the cityscape that people can't miss. But the thing that I never would have thought of was having them sign it. And initially when I saw that, I thought, well, that's nice. The volunteers get their little credit, they get their name on it. But then it struck me that it's really like signing a public declaration, like signing an oath. And I was wondering, what was the thinking behind that?
We were thinking of like a petition, like a big petition, and the community could all kind of get behind it and say, yes, this is something that we support. We want to see racism end in our community, and we are willing to sign our name to it. And it was really great to see. And at the time, you know, with COVID and everything, there were people who couldn't make it out, but they were messaging their friends or family who was coming out and say, sign my name to it. I want my name on there. And so it was just really wonderful to have that experience. And we didn't have a lot of negative pushback, but there was a couple instances where, you know, people who felt like we should be talking about something else tried to make their voice heard. And so there were some moments where we would have to go in and redact things that got written into the street mural and put something else. But I was surprised that it didn't get as much out of hand as it could have.
Oh, when I still see the videotape, the news tape of people doing that, I just find it very, very moving to have them essentially put our names, you know, we put our names to this. That is really incredible.
Thank you.
You talked about not really considering yourself a muralist, obviously because it's so different from your typical artworks. Is it anything you really want to pursue now? Or was it just this moment, this ask?
You know, I don't consider myself a muralist, but I feel like I'm always talking about things that are going on in society in my personal work. And I was able to work with another group of artists to start this project called Vote Equals Voice, where we partnered and made other murals pop up around the Metroplex, sort of encouraging people to get out and vote. And I think that, you know, there's no way of measuring how much of an impact that had on the voter turnout, but we targeted communities that had low voter turnout to try to make voting cool and engage them in that way. And so I think it'll be great to, now that the election is over, to continue engaging those communities and not just have these conversations around an election, but sort of build a mindset of the importance of all elections, even the midterms and all these kind of things where people tend to drop off in their voting, and have these conversations. And of course, we're going to do that from some sort of artistic.
This is a question for both you and for Juan. We knew going in that End Racism Now was going to have a temporary existence, that it was eventually, we're going to lose it, as it were. But is that, you know, in built into the mural art form? You just have to accept it, that your work is going to be have an immediate impact. It's going to resonate. But do you think of any sort of long-term effect? Juan? Okay, I'm sorry, hang on. Juan, we've lost some of the audio. So Jan, what about your students' work?
The students' work is a proposal, I would say, for the community to use for themselves. Often I work with nonprofits, and I challenge my students to look into the mission of the nonprofit and the community of the nonprofit. And then I have maybe a dozen students that propose a mural. Right now, one of the nonprofits on the west side of Fort Worth is actually voting on which of the student projects they would like to see realized. So it gives them a talking point, I would say, in terms of what represents us. My students did not come up with the quotes for the mural. The social worker in the neighborhood actually gathered information and put together a list that my students had to select from. And my students learned. They hadn't heard a lot of the names on the list. So it was a learning opportunity for my students. And it gives back to the community an option of conversation. So my students listened and they provided, and then it gave an opportunity for the community to see designs and artwork by students that could be used in a community center on the west side.
Okay, I'm back. Are you all back? If you
Yes.
can we hear you?
I think so.
Very good. All right. So I addressed that question to Juan and Letitia about any hoped for long-term impact, or do you simply have to accept the limits of this genre?
Well, I think that art has always artists have used art, right? Or whatever medium they paint with, which is oil painting, acrylic, or murals, to speak on current events in the world. So I think that people are going to continue to do that, I hope. And I see a lot of positive change in Fort Worth. Hopefully, they're able to accept other types of art that has not, Fort Worth has a very narrow-minded way of thinking of what's art and what's not art. And a lot of artists don't get opportunities to do work for the city because they don't like that type of art. So, hopefully I would like for, that to change, because, there's a lot of great artists out there, and we all deserve, to speak on how we feel about current social issues in the way that we want to do it.
So you see, not only do your murals advocate for a particular person, cause, point of view, but it's actually advocating for the form of art itself, the style.
Yeah, I do. I think that there's definitely a style of art that Fort Worth likes, and mine's not that way, which is why I've never really gotten any opportunities from the city to do anything. But the people in the city like my work, and I always told people that I'd rather have the community behind me than the people running the city.
Letitia?
Yeah, I think, I'm not, whether the work stays up for a long period of time or not is not a huge concern for me. If it does, great. But I love that that the artists are able to respond to whatever's going on at the time. So I think I'm more interested in sort of how artists interpret the current events and having that sort of visual conversation with the communities. If we just relied on the work to stay up, and that conversation would get old and people would stop paying attention to it. But if the artists are still out there working and, responding to the cultural climate, political climate, whatever it is, then that conversation is ongoing. And I believe the community would then get used to that kind of visual dialogue, and it might have more of an impact.
So for you, this is literally like a kind of Twitter or Instagram on the wall.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
I do know that developers, commercial murals are often designed deliberately as an Instagram moment, because if young people go there and photograph themselves, they're helping to advertise the apartment community or the business or whatever. But you're saying that this is essentially like a Twitter feed telling people about causes, concerns.
Yeah, and I think that artists have a lot of powerful things to say through their work, and it might be, seeing, Juan's murals might have a big impact on the younger generation, or, like he was talking about with his daughter and how she sees herself. That's a big deal, I don't know how, there's no way to really measure how much that impact is, but it's there. And somebody's going to see it, and somebody's going to be moved by it. I went out of my way to drive and go see Juan's stuff, and so that's huge. I think just being able to have that timely conversation within the community. And a lot of the people that we're speaking to, they don't go to the museums. I love the museums, don't get me wrong, but they're not always going to go and see the works in the museums. But on the street, in a way that's vibrant and well composed, and just grabs your attention, and is dealing with stuff they're hearing about on the news, or hearing about at school, or in their conversations at home. That's power.
I saw an interview recently with Brian Eno, the record producer who's worked with Talking Heads and David Bowie and the others, and he is often considered the man who invented ambient music in the 80s. And it took 30 years for it to really influence the rest of the music scene. It was always considered this odd genre over there. And he talked about what he called long-term impact. He said there were certain artists that just had that. It just took a while for everyone else to catch on and start using it. So I think with a mural, if it's up long enough, it could have that kind of impact. Jan, you spoke earlier about the possible benefits, long-term impact of what your students' plans would do. And you even use the term. Essentially, what they're doing is branding a neighborhood. Is that a good idea? I mean, what does that produce? What does that lead to?
It really helps define what the community wants to say to the outside, who they are. It also helps bring vibrancy to a community to attract investment, which is what the communities in the Urban Village program in Fort Worth really would like to do. I would say murals, to me, they start a conversation. They're in the environment, they're in the pedestrian environment, you're interacting with them. You don't have to go to a museum in a place to have an experience with the design, with the artwork. And I really do work very closely with the City of Fort Worth Urban Village program, or the nonprofits and the neighborhood associations, to help form the student prompt, so that they are given all the facts, and then they have to go into the community and really listen, which is the important part of a designer conversation, is the listening aspect. So they hopefully are interpreting what the conversation should be going from the community outward. And they're really giving back different proposals, hearing the same facts. So I think it's important to I actually, going off what Juan said, I actually have hope for this generation coming up, because I do think they're listening. I do think that they are open to ideas. I do think that they want the world to be a better place. So that might be me of 30 years of being an educator, but I do think this generation is open to change and open to taking on the responsibility for themselves, and they're opening to listening. And that's what designers do.
We have an interesting question from the chat. This is about commercial murals, about developers. And the question is from Ariella Villa. The developers need to pay artists accordingly for the exponential consumers generated by branding in perpetuity. What would be the going rate? They cite the Art Space 111 of $8,000. In effect, it's not like a TV ad or a newspaper ad. It's going to be there. So is that something, Juan, that you would consider that would be fair to factor in the length of time the mural was up?
For me, Well, the that 8,000 is not enough in my opinion. Um, based on the average rate on a mural, because you charge per square foot, and so I had a lot of people tell me about that mural, and I'm gonna apply for it because I have the I have the means to do this mural and not be hurting for money. But not every artist is in that same situation. So for a different artist, they might not be able to do it because of the time that it would take to do it, and you have to rent sometimes you have to rent a lift like that can cost like $2,000 just to rent it. The paint could be about $1,000 just for the paint, so you're already at 3,000. So that's like 5,000 left. So if it takes you like 3 weeks to do it, I do definitely think that a lot of people are cashing into because I get people all the time they're like, hey, can you paint a mural for free? Can you do this for free? It will mean a lot to me if you do it for free. Especially businesses, and they know what it's worth. They know what it's worth. If you call a professional company to come paint the side of your building just a plain color, they'll charge you more than what you're trying to pay an artist to do it. So I definitely do think that people need to start valuing art a little bit more because, like in Dallas, people are more open to pay more money for art. So the time that I've had issues is like in Fort Worth, where people always want to like pay you less than what I think is fair.
That's interesting. In driving around Dallas and Fort Worth in the last year or two, I have seen areas of town that are literally have been transformed by murals. There's the design district in Fort Worth. There's Oak Cliff in Dallas, where a combination of commercial ventures and the artists themselves, they, at least in those neighborhoods, they seem to have made that area of town somewhat representative of this kind of colorful change. And it is something I think that developers are clearly aware of. If you get enough, there's a certain critical mass that happens that kind of takes over a neighborhood or a block. I'm familiar with the design district, and of course, South Main near Southside has been using murals and other city design, urban graphics and things. Are there other areas of town in Fort Worth where this is happening? Because I'm not as familiar.
There is an area off of University when you head north, the Foundry District, that has a whole alleyway full of murals. And it's kind of expanding westward into the River West area, which ends up on 183. And it's really spurred by developers and the fact that the community wants to have a pedestrian environment. I mean, in Texas, we're in our cars all the time, but they really want a multi-level, multicultural area that you can live and shop and work. And so they're creating those spaces and trying to honor still the community that exists in there. And that's the delicate balance that you don't want to push out the people that have invested in the community, but you want to bring investment in. So there are some areas that are working like that. That's the urban villages of the City of Fort Worth Development District, that they have gone in and reworked the pedestrian environment, new curbs, new sidewalks. And I've been working with them to just kind of talk and listen to the community, the nonprofits, and also the neighborhood associations, to try to get some of the money that's floating in certain communities to float over and invest in communities that are really vibrant that people they love their communities and they want them to succeed. So those are two areas I would say that are really kind of booming in terms of some development. I'd like to see it spread to other parts of the city that could really use that visibility as well.
Okay. With the mention of cars, I wanted to ask Juan. It was said that hundreds of people came to see your Vanessa Guillen mural, and I was wondering how much of the mural do you paint for pedestrian, and how much do you consider what a car will see driving past?
I don't know. I don't think that I think too much about that, to be honest with you. I I don't really focus too much on that. I do commission work, and I'll do one or two, and then I'll get some money from that, and then I'll do one for free for the community. So I about like 40% of all the murals that I've done for free, because I want to give back to the community, and I mainly focus on places where, well, before I was just taking whatever wall I could find, but now I'm focusing on areas that I believe that are overlooked by the city. I've been like I did one on Oak Cliff in this neighborhood that I it's coming up, but it's definitely not the best looking neighborhood. And there, I mean, they're fixing it up, and I wanted to help with that. But also like Diamond Hill, I painted one there, and these are areas that the roads are bad, and it's kind of like these kids growing up. My goal is to invest in the future of the arts, the future, not mine. It's not about me. We can't be so selfish to think that it's all about us. It's about the people that come in. We're building a better world for our kids and the people that come after us. So these kids, they already know that they don't feel like they're worth as much as other communities, because if the city won't even fix the roads, what does that tell them? It tells them what they already know, that they're not worth it. Their schools are underfunded, and what does that tell them? I remember whenever I started my art class, one of my art teachers gave me this brand new notebook and this thing of pencils, and like no one's ever done that for me. So like that made me feel like I was an artist, and that helped spark my fire for art. And I actually still have those pencils. I have them here in my art room, because it reminds me that somebody invested in me and made me feel like a new person. It's like getting a haircut. When you get a haircut, you're the same person, but you just feel better. So that's what I want to do with my art, to invest in these communities and make them feel like they're just as beautiful as 7th Street and other areas that've been just kind of hipsterized. It's like they're important too, and if we invest in these children, then there's going to be less of them, and they're going to end up in prison. If you talk to some of these kids, they already accepted that they might end up in prison. That's actually a fact. They accepted it already. They accepted the fact that they get shot at. So we got to change their mentality and make them feel like they could be business owners, like they could do whatever they want to do in the world. So that's kind of what I focus mainly on: the communities that need the most attention, not necessarily how they see it.
So in a way, you're using your art as a kind of one-man urban development and education system.
Yeah, and I've said, like, if the city doesn't provide me with any resources, which they haven't, I said I'll do it by myself. I don't need them, and I'm gonna keep doing that. I'm gonna keep doing it by myself, even if I have to do it all by myself. I'll do it by myself.
So currently, you're able to make a living with your murals, with the commercial murals.
Yeah, That's what I do full time. I am an artist, and I tell people if I was a better business person, I wouldn't be doing so many free murals, and I would have a lot of money in my bank account. But I didn't get in this business to be rich. I got in this business to do art, talk about art, and share what I know with other people. Which is why when people say like, I get questions all the time like, "Hey, how can I learn this? How can I do this?" I said, just show up to my next mural, and I will teach you what I'm doing. And I've had multiple students that are now doing it by themselves because to me it's not a competition. I'm not competing with anybody else. I want everybody to learn what I know. Not that I know everything, which I don't, but if you want to learn what I know, I'll happily teach you. You know, because I'm making the arts around my city better. Because now there's two of us. There's two of us out there making a change. Now there's three of us, and then you create a movement. Once you have a movement, there's no stopping that.
This is directed to you, Jan. One of our viewers, Leslie Azornio, asks that in shifting the focus to these communities that are often overlooked, you brought this up, the question of, does this simply aid in gentrification, and how do you safeguard that against that?
Well, I think giving the residents a voice in a marketing component that they have ownership of because they vote on it. So they have ownership of this is what we want to say. And they didn't have that before. It was interesting when I sent my students into an urban village on the Near Southside. They were taking pictures. Immediately, some of the community's members said, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" And they invited him to the meeting. And they've been telling their story again and again and again, but no one seems to be listening. Now they have these students who are not even from Fort Worth. One was from Bend, Oregon. The other one was from Longview, and they were just listening and taking notes and interpreting what was important to this community, which was their history, their musical history, their history of their educators, and the churches that were left standing. So that's what they really wanted to get out there. So the developers that have been brought in are aware of the history of the neighborhood. It is a delicate balance because you can't live in the past. You want to mentor the future and bring investment. So it's a reflection kind of what the community spoke to my students about. So it becomes a discussion point with the city and the developers. It was an interesting learning experience, and it was basically a conversation and listening, which is what we really want those people with investment dollars to do, rather than just put their rubber stamp on a community that could be anywhere in the United States after they're done with it, is to honor the people that live there, so that their pedestrian environment is a continuation of who they are.
Letitia, I didn't mean to be ignoring you. I was wondering if you had any experience with issues of gentrification.
Well, I guess I'm still rather new to this, doing murals in the community, but the areas we've been targeting haven't been in danger of that as of yet. But other than one area, which was on Near Southeast downtown, that area, I know the city had gone in at one point and was going to fix it up, but I fix it up and bring in a lot more businesses, and it's been slow over time since they had their charrette about that. But I think the community was very active there and was able to maintain their sense of community, basically, and sort of pushed back on the city in some regards and have allowed some progress in others. But you do see it starting to shift there a little bit, like that whole like Magnolia Street feel is starting to jump across 35 to the other side, sort of spill over that way. But like they've got a great neighborhood association there that's active and involved, and but that's not true with all communities. So those other ones tend to get run over. But the ones we've been working with have haven't had that issue as of yet.
Historically, in Dallas, that has always been the issue. Is that we generally have weak neighborhood associations. So gentrification can be like a wildfire before the neighborhood really can set up some sort of resistance. It's too late.
Yeah.
It does take a really strong community neighborhood association to be the firewall. Like you said, before you know it, all the properties bought up and the bulldozers are coming in. There are several in Fort Worth that are either arts-based or a neighborhood-based or community center-based that really are that firewall, that want to continue their community and their identity, but invite the type of investment that they would like to honor that community rather than gentrified. So it really will be up to the communities themselves to gather together and create a single voice.
Juan, I've seen a number of your murals around town, and it's made me wonder what has been their immediate effect on the surrounding neighborhood. Have they had any sort of effect in terms of what you were talking about, in terms of bringing more focus, elevating the neighborhood, or has there been any sense of gentrification? That people now see this as an attractive place?
I guess I don't think too much about the politics on that, man. I just paint what I want to paint, and it's some change is good, some is not, but I've gotten a lot of positive feedback, so I don't really worry too much about it. But again, my goal is with the young kids. So, so I won't know if I made a positive. I guess when I'm really old, I'll figure out if my life was had meaning or not.
Well, you said that you teach classes. You don't teach classes actually mural painting, do you? I mean,
well, I am an art teacher on Mondays. I teach at a All Saints Catholic School. So in Fort Worth, and like I told people, I was like, I don't even know how much they pay me. Because I'm not. I do it because it's an opportunity for me to teach art to the young kids, and I'm telling you that there's been a lot of times where somebody's been like, hey, come work on Monday, and you can make a lot of money, and I'm like, nah, I'm teaching. I gotta teach art, and I lost out on a lot of money. But for me, like I said, it's not about the money. It's about the next generation of kids. And some of those, if I can make a change the way my art teachers made a big change in me. Actually, one of my art teachers, Mr. Daniels from Haltom High School, he probably made the biggest change in my life. Without his help, I wouldn't be doing this. He's the one who taught me how to do oil painting. And he really helped me see the world differently. And he actually gave me my first painting brushes, which I actually have them here in my art studio. I framed them because, and over them it says "Never forget," because somebody helped me. So this is what drives me to help people, because just something so simple like teaching me how to do oil painting to help me become a better person. Like that's a huge thing that my life went completely different where it would have been. So, and it's funny because I always look for him on Facebook for many years because I wanted to thank him for everything he's done in my life. But he actually added me on Facebook yesterday. So I just didn't. I haven't know. I don't know what to say. But yeah, that's kind of what drives me to to trying to help these communities, trying to help the young artists, because that's what worked for me. So that's I wish I could make a change in these kids' lives the way my art teachers made a huge change on my life.
That's spoken like a true teacher, Juan. I hate to tell you that.
Well, I mean, I'm not. It's hard for me to like. My mind's going like 100 miles an hour all the time. It's hard for me to stay to a schedule and be like, okay, I gotta teach them, and because I just want to be like, let's kick this door down, let's go outside and let's do some art. Like, but it's there's definitely a value in like structural teaching, but yeah, and so I do that teaching, but I also have like local artists that reach out to me and said, hey, I want to learn how to do murals, I want to do how to do oil painting, how do I do this? And this right now I'm in my studio. I have two studios, one's in Riverside and then the one here at my house. So I bring people into my studio all the time, and I teach them how to do oil painting, or I'll bring them out with me and teach them how to do spray paint. So I want to teach as much as I can.
Jan, it seems to me that on the subject of teaching artists, it seems to me that your projects, as much as you're teaching graphic design, you're teaching students a certain degree of social consciousness.
Well, that is part of the mission that I do take forward from TCU, is to get these students in the community and to get them to give back, especially the seniors. We've given to them for 4 years. They're about to leave us, and to give back. I will say the projects that you're rotating through to the students. She was an Air Force vet, came to Fort Worth, a very talented illustrator. She stayed in Fort Worth with her husband. So they're investing in the community moving forward. The other one was from Longview, Texas, Michelle. She was a double major, music and graphic design, so I knew that she'd be great in that community because of its rich jazz history. And again, she's living here in Fort Worth, contributing that way. So I think it's important that students, they are our future. That is something that I can hear in Juan's talking, that it made me say he is a teacher, because it's really passing that on. You never see your results. You see the students carry with them, but giving back to community is really important in any adult's life. And my students are almost adults. Next week, some of them will be, I hope. But giving back to your community is part of any adult should be doing. And Fort Worth is multicultural. It's multi neighborhoods, and they need to get out of their certain zip code and go and see and listen. That's a big part of learning, is experience. So the experience of being around other voices, other stories and other experiences is part of growing up. So,
Letitia, I wanted to return to your experience as a gallery artist, turning outward into murals. Is that a completely different mindset? Because it strikes me your typical work is not so much internal, but very tightly focused. And it's very, for lack of a better word, sort of domestic. It uses things like embroidery circles and things like that. Whereas a mural is all outward focused. It's even on the outside of the buildings. It is the public museum on a huge scale. Is that a different frame of mind entirely for you as an artist?
A little bit, because I see the mural work as activism, and then the studio practice is more just my personal voice and whatever it is I want to talk about at the time. But the works that we've been doing on the street is more about the community and sort of like galvanizing a community and just really sort of shaking things up in that regard. And all of the work that we've been doing, we didn't get paid for any of that, whereas the studio work, I expect to get paid for that. But
other than get out the vote, what has the activism been directed at?
Well, just wanting to get, it started out, we were getting people registered. So whenever we would do one of these murals, we'd have a registrar there so that they could help individuals register to vote. And we targeted areas, like I said, that typically have low voter turnout. And so that was the main thing. The mural was the draw to get them there to register. And then after the date for the deadline for registration, it was to encourage people to actually go and vote, because we had, I believe, tens of thousands of people who registered to vote that did not vote during the midterms in 2018. And so the idea was like, let's just keep encouraging them. I heard from Giovanni Valderas, who's a dear friend of mine, said, in order to get people to move, you have to have 3 touches. You have to engage them 3 times. So we were trying to, get out there on multiple occasions so that they're seeing us and they're remembering that this is coming up and this needs to be done. So that was sort of a main push for that.
You said you were pleasantly surprised by the response to the End Racism Now mural. It seems to me, I wasn't surprised really that it drew so many people. I mean, when you paint something that big, that large, that bold with that kind of statement. So why were you surprised?
I think that the last few years I have been dealing with a lot of stress as an African American in this country, and I have been seeing so much negative pushback to me as an individual. I grew up in a military family, but my dad was an officer, so I was very protected. At one point, he was like second in command on the base, so nobody would ever say anything to me, And so, but my parents are both from the Deep South, from Louisiana and Mississippi, and my mom marched with Martin Luther King, so I heard things, but I didn't live it. And these last few years have really sort of opened my eyes, and I realized, half of the country may be against me. But so I really didn't know what to expect when we did that mural. I really thought that there was going to be a large amount of people who came out and said things that I did not like. And there may have been a lot of people who would be afraid to participate in something so focused on ending racism, even if they felt like they were against it. And so I went into it just like, whatever happens, happens. Let's do this and make the best of it. And if we get a ton of signatures, great. If we don't, we still put our statement out there. But the city and people even from Dallas and other areas in the Metroplex drove out to come and put their names on that mural. And after the mural was up, everywhere I went, people would say, hey, you guys did that mural. It was so wonderful. We really appreciate all the work you're doing. And it was warming to see how many people are for ending racism. And even in my own community, there was some pushback because they felt like the phrase itself, end racism now, was sort of a plea to racists, as opposed to like just stating Black Lives Matter, So there's always this push and pull between what people think should be done and what we should focus on. Like I said, there was one lady who came who felt like we should be talking about the children's rights, advocating for children and not Black people. And so, I just went into it. I maybe I had a little bit of post-traumatic shock syndrome, from all the stuff that's been going on, some PTSD or something. But I was pleasantly surprised, and it was very heartwarming to me to see the community turn out like that.
Partly because it was so big and so visual, I think it got more media coverage than almost any other artwork I've seen in the last year in this area. Even print outlets sent their video cameramen to make videos of the creation of it. So it was actually kind of a process art as well as that final statement.
Yeah.
And even now, if you Google it, you get a lot of videos of that.
Yeah.
What is its current status? I haven't driven by lately.
I haven't either because of this residency that I'm on right now. When I'm back up in Fort Worth for the weekends, I try to spend all the time with the family and not not get caught up in all that stuff. So maybe this weekend I might be able to get by and see where it is.
We're running down pretty close. And so if anyone wants to ask a final question online, they need to do so now. But if you have a question, please put it in. I guess the question I want to ask to end with is, what would you like to see, each of you? What would you like to see either in a particular kind of mural, the acceptance of murals, the future development of murals in Fort Worth? I know that I drive around town occasionally and think that's a great wall. You know, if I had the time, the money, the talent, that's a great wall. So simply anything for the future of murals in Fort Worth.
It's a good question.
Yeah, to Juan's point, I think that they should be paid, first of all. It shouldn't be commercial in its appeal without having some financial reward for the artist. You know, for Juan being an artist and a wannabe teacher, he's picked the lowest two professions of pain that you can possibly come So he needs to be paid for his visionary ideas. So I think, you know, there are walls out there, and they need to speak to the community and be the voice of the community, but they also need to engage artists and pay them as well.
Juan?
I would like for people to give more artistic freedom to artists, especially when you're working with like business owners or people who are developing an area. A lot of times they don't have the best ideas, and you know, I've painted things before where they're like, this is what I want, and I'm just like, yeah, like that's a terrible idea, but I'll do it if you're gonna pay me. And then I'll paint something, and they're like, oh, you should have painted something like that, and I'm like, see, it's because it's like it's when you have artistic freedom, the artwork is better. So if you hire an artist because you like that artist, then let them paint whatever they feel that will fit better in that area, because they're probably going to be more passionate about that and give you a better piece than painting your idea that, you know, it's not well thought of.
Letitia, you're the final say.
I think that I would like to see more artists sort of collaborate with each other. We often tend to be on an island, and I think it's exciting what Juan's doing, the piece that's in 2 different cities. And I think there's some room there for artists in different cities to sort of have a visual conversation with each other. And really, I would love to see in Texas that take fire and just spread like crazy, in that these murals that are, you know, timely and dealing with what's going on in our communities, be this, you know, kind of the way rappers communicate with each other through song, you know, have this this visual language going back and forth between artists, I think would be really exciting.
I'd like to thank our panelists, Jan Ballard, Juan Velazquez, and Letitia Huckaby. I'd also like to thank the Kimbell Art Museum. This conversation will be archived, and you'll be able to see it as well on art&seek.org. So thank you. Enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.